And Katie, can you make me the main person on the screen from your perspective so that the recording doesn't show other people's faces?
Yep,
Okay.
speaker
Because
only.
I'm gonna talk for a minute before I start screen
Yep,
sharing.
yeah.
Cool.
So
Okay.
I I
Go
do
ahead.
want to welcome everybody here tonight. Um, I am so excited that Kathleen has agreed to do this workshop for breast friends on nutrition for recovery after your treatment. So Kathleen, I'm going to let you take it away.
Okay, thanks. Most of you know some things about me already, but I'm going to go ahead and talk about who I am for Trisha's sake and for those that are watching the recording. My name is Kathleen Moss. I am a breast cancer survivor and I'm a nutritionist. And I became a nutritionist because I had cancer scares in my early 40s when I was starting to go through menopause or perimenopause and started to have a lot of fluctuation in my hormones. I had both an ovarian scare and a uterine scare. I had uterine polyps, had to have uterine polyps removed when I was 42. And then I also had a breast scare at that point, about 9 years before my actual um, a serious occurrence of for sure breast cancer. I started doing surveillance and screening to watch my left breast because it had a little bit of a shadow and I had very dense breast tissue. So, because I was studying nutrition so much to try to avoid getting cancer because this scared me so much, I just realized, I may as well just become a nutritionist. And then after I became a nutritionist, I really wanted to help other people. And so I've been doing that for a while now. I became a nutritionist in 2018. And when I got cancer, when I started having the symptom of bloody nipple discharge, I really got down on myself like, "Oh, man, I know this is gonna be cancer, and I didn't do a good enough job." And so I'm also, an ambassador to tell you all that that's not the truth. I mean, I think in my case, I did such a good job that my cancer, probably was there all that time and wasn't growing very much at all. And I wasn't even very physically active, which is the main thing you can do for your cancer, risk reduction both before and after cancer. And so even with what little I was doing in terms of physical activity, I still had a pretty darn good outcome. I had just 2 millimeters of lobular breast cancer, and I didn't have to do chemo or radiation. So I'm not down on myself anymore because I realize I have to be grateful for that. So yeah, nutrition can do a lot. But, I also wanna give the caveat that exercise can do even more. As I was saying earlier, I think all of you were here. Before we started recording, we were talking about exercise oncology. So, I'm really passionate about that too. I live out near Hag Lake between Forest Grove and Gaston, Yamhill area, and I have a husband and 3 kids. I have an adopted daughter and 2 stepsons. They're all adults, and I'm 52. And I work with both the breast cancer survivor population in my work, both with nutrition and as an advocate in the breast cancer space. And I also work with elders because my dad has had dementia for years, and I really passionately wanted to help him with that. And so I work 1 day a week as a nutritionist on staff at Friendsview Retirement Community in Newburgh. So those are kind of my background details, and I will go ahead and try to share my screen now. See if I can. Oh boy, hold on. Just a sec.
Is it going to let you share?
I think it'll let me share, but it's not showing Canva as an option for some reason. So let me try that again. Okay, now it is. Let's see if it'll let me. Yeah, there we go. Do full screen. Yay! Success. Okay. So my new program, it's brand new for breast cancer survivors, is called Clean Up After Breast Cancer. So that's what I'm calling this talk also. Hey, we got a new person. Welcome. You're just in time. I just started Just started the PowerPoint. So I will at the end of my talk, I'll talk about my membership program. You can sign up to be a member at a discounted rate if you're here today. But it's called Cleanup After Breast Cancer. All right, let's see if I can. Hopefully, y'all can see this pretty well. So this is the myth that I had to recover from myself. The idea of nutritionism versus autonomic recovery. So when we talk about cancer, we tend to think that if you're surveying breast cancer survivors, they tend to say, number one reason I got cancer, or the reason my cancer grew once I got it, was because of my stress levels. And I think there's something to that. There's a lot of evidence that that could be the case. But number two, they say, and it's because of my nutrition. And that is not correct. Nutrition is not a high on the list risk factor for breast cancer growth. It is not proven to be so yet. Maybe way in the distant future, we will see that that's the case, but we can't prove it yet. But it does make sense, right? Like every day you see your hand go to your mouth with food in it, and you think, well, this is what I'm putting in, so it must be making a difference. And that makes sense. It's logical to believe that every bite we take makes us either more sick or more healthy. But it's not correct. It's not how our body works. Our bodies are so crazy resilient. They can build different factors, they can build different molecules, reestablish amino acids, take things apart, put things together. The immune system is amazingly powerful and it can get what it needs, even from a lousy diet in most cases. The one thing that it gets from a lousy diet, though, is overall inflammation, systemic inflammation. We know that. So science can prove that. And so there is a really good reason to eat well. But it's not as scary of a situation, to eat a french fry as you might think it is. And certainly in terms of social media and the media at large is full of, you know, huge scary myths that we really need to turn down the volume on. So the way that our bodies do work is autonomically, so automatically. It's using a diverse web of resources to capture both nutrients and other, important strengths. We use, good rest and exercise and all the things that we can do lifestyle wise to build strength. But the immune system can recover and work well even in the absence of those things. So I'm here to tell you, as the nutritionist, you do not need to stress over what you're eating. It's good to reduce the inflammation of what you're eating and reduce the toxins in what you're eating. And that's what my next slide is kind of about. So this is kind of what my idea is of a web of recovery. So an anti-inflammatory diet would be great. And I've got my next slide is going to talk about what that looks like. And then reducing toxins in your home, air, food, and water is also really good. The Environmental Working Group is a wonderful website for researching how to get the toxins out of your air and your water. And then your friendly neighborhood nutritionist is really good at talking about getting the toxins out of your diet. And then daily activity that decreases stress. So, not chronic cardio, not necessarily Zumba or spin classes, but an activity that is not stressful for your body. And your body is unique and you have the genes that your parents and grandparents gave you. So if they had an extremely active lifestyle, then you'll do better with chronic cardio, like, Zumba and spin classes. But most of us do better with just a brisk walk every day and reducing pain and stiffness because pain can build an environment of inflammation in the body. And then finally, quality sleep and periods of rest. And in this day and age, periods of rest means fasting from media, of course, and doing some meditation to calm ourselves when we're getting worked up. So, my part of this are the top two parts, the reasonable anti inflammatory diet and reducing toxins. So, we'll talk about that next. And I have let's see if I can get into the chat from here. I guess I can't. I'm going to give you all the links at once at the end. So I have a link to this. It lives on my website. It's a PDF and it's what I give my clients. I don't know if when I move this, it moves it for all of you. Is that the case for you? Can you see the right side of my screen? No, you can't. Oh, shoot. Okay, well, just say the words instead of having you read them. So these are red light foods. These are the inflammatory foods that we want to decrease, the ones at the top on the red section of the chart. And so what I have on the right side of my screen is choose one of these to stop this month. Don't go crazy. Don't stop all of them because that's not sustainable. You won't
We
make
do see
changes.
that.
Is
Sorry.
that what'd you say?
We do see that part.
You do? Oh, good. Okay,
Yeah, I
perfect.
do see the whole we do see the whole slide. Yeah.
Yay. Okay.
Sorry, I
Well,
thought you
and
had something else up there.
I have to keep moving the little black box around to see everything. So I didn't know if you would. So yeah, my advice is every month choose one of these red items to take out of your diet and replace with one of the green items, and only one per month because that's a way to build a solid habit that will last. If you go crazy and you try to take all of them out at once, because you think that this is going to make a major change in your life, it's not sustainable. It won't be something that you'll hold on to probably long term. So Uh, I will not go over these because I'm gonna give you this, and I will if you really need help understanding what these distinctions are, which you shouldn't, then you can email me later. I'll give you my email address in the chat at the end. And then choose one yellow, cautionary item that's not super inflammatory, but it's marginally inflammatory, um, to slow down on this month because maybe you eat a lot of these foods. Maybe this is your whole diet here in the yellow. Um, in that case, just slow down on one of these this month and then maybe choose another one next month. And then the foods to really focus on and eat as much as possible of is the foods in the green zone here. They're the least inflammatory, and some of them are actually anti inflammatory. So they will work against inflammation in your body. And that's really the extent of my advice. For in terms of the food that you put in your mouth, that's all I have to say tonight. You can ask me clarifying questions because we're saving 30 minutes at least for you to ask me questions. So we can talk all about food later on if this is not enough for you. So I'm going to move on. What about obesity? So, thankfully, we know a lot more about obesity than we did 10 or 20 years ago. We know because of epigenetics that our body weight and body constitution, our BMI, if you will, is a result of not our choices and our behaviors as much as they are our grandparents. So, while the egg that created you was in your mother's womb, it was mostly drawn up by the DNA that existed in your grandparents, your maternal, paternal, grandma, grandpa. And so the kinds of things that they struggled through in their life are what is dictating your eating behaviors and your body's shape. Not even your eating behaviors, but just the extent to which your body holds on to the calories that you eat. And so there needs to be a lot less focus on individual responsibility in terms of body weight and body mass index in the world, because we are only just responding to the ways that our grandparents have needed to survive. And our bodies are just programmed the way their bodies were programmed to get through times of drought and famine and the Great Depression in many of our cases. So, if you have a high or low metabolism, that isn't something you can just start taking a magic grapefruit diet and change overnight. That's a total myth, and I'm sure you all know that. But there's no magic food or magic diet that will change our metabolism. Of course, doing more exercise will change our metabolism, but your body still will want to hold on to a certain amount of security pounds, if you will, if your grandparents went through any kind of adversity or time of want, or their parents. And so I worked with this in my own family because I have an adopted daughter. Her grandparents were from the southernmost region of Mexico and the most impoverished part of Mexico. And she, of course, is always comparing herself and her metabolism to my metabolism. And I had to help her understand that this is not about what we're eating every day and how come mom eats broccoli and mac and cheese and she doesn't gain weight, but I eat broccoli and mac and cheese and I do gain weight. And explaining to her that it's really about her heritage and the DNA that her grandparents passed down to her to help her survive, and that there should be no body blame or body shame. So this is something I just wanna make sure people know about when we talk about obesity. Yes, obesity is a risk factor for breast cancer. It is a risk factor for recurrence, but your obesity is different than my obesity. If I, as someone who inherited a high metabolism, got obese and most of my weight was in fat, that would make me even more at risk for breast cancer, than someone who has a lot of muscle and is big boned, let's say. So you most nutritionists will tell you that any kind of weight loss is going to be slow going and hard to hard to come by. So, it's something we can work on long term. If I were to work with you one on one, I would have ways to do that. And the main tips that I give is to focus on the protein and the fat instead of the carbohydrates. Because if you starve yourself of carbs and fat, then you're going to be hungry all the time, and that makes you crazy. So one of the books that I love in this area is, if you can see my screen, I'll show it to you later too. Maybe is The Diet Cure by Julia Ross, and she talks about the fact that certain amino acids are missing from our diets these days, and they came from wild meat. And we used to, as a human race, have wild meat in our diet all the time. And so we had a way higher levels of amino acids like tryptophan that modulate our weight. And so I work with folks in a little bit more intensive setting around obesity, around things like that, finding the right amino acid balance and just working on your metabolism. So, yeah, don't I want my talk to be reassuring to you in terms of not blaming yourself. It is not your fault and it's not your grandparents' fault. It's the circumstances under which your grandparents and great grandparents lived that dictated the way that your body is designed to pad itself with extra pounds. And we can talk more about this when we get to the Q&A part too. So moving on to the effects of chemo. So this is the rehab part of my talk. For those of you who have gone through chemo, um, your gut is made of epithelial cells, and epithelial cells are the kinds of cells that chemo attacks. And so the gut lining, the skin, the nails, those things that get super irritated by chemo, um, can be restored with probiotics, prebiotics. Now there's such a thing as postbiotics, but I won't go into that. There are 2 probiotic supplements that I highly recommend for anyone that's been through chemo, whether you just went through it or it's been a couple years. Your microbiome is probably still out of whack even a few years later after you're done with chemo. And it's a pretty easy regimen. It's 1 bottle of each. Maybe forever. That's all you need is two bottles of probiotics. And maybe if you have a sensitive system and you've struggled with dysbiosis your whole life, like myself, then you might need to do this as a reset once a year, but it's still just 2 bottles a year in that case. So it's not too expensive. The number one that I would start with is Saccharomyces boulardii. It's a yeast-based probiotic that is really good at wiping out the bad bugs in your gut. I have it on my nightstand all the time because, like I said, I've had dysbiosis all my life. I'm not sure why. Probably some evil antibiotic that I took when I was a teenager, but I just couldn't ever get to having a really strong stomach the way that my husband does. And so I take that at night whenever I have any kind of loose stool or upset stomach. And overnight, usually a couple of those pills will do it for me and I'll be back to normal. Sometimes I'll have to take it for 2 or 3 days. But after chemo, it's really important to take a full bottle. So, like 2 pills at bedtime. You want it to go to work when you don't have a lot of food in your stomach because it needs to work on your stomach lining. And it wipes out all the bad guys and it makes room for the good guys. And the good guys come from probiotic foods. So, fermented foods is the main way that we get them. But then there's also another really good new probiotic on the scene called B coagulans that I really recommend. And I'll give you a link at the end of my presentation to order these 2 probiotics if you'd like to, um, at a discount on my full script account. So Saccharomyces boulardii, the company I like is Metabolic Maintenance. This is the bottle that sits by my bed. And it's a local company. It's in Eugene. So, and they do glass bottles, which I love a lot because most supplements do plastic bottles, which aren't great for us or for the environment. And then, B coagulants. I don't have one of those bottles on hand right now, but, that's a good one. It's good because it survives the harsh chemical environment of the stomach. The stomach is full of acid kinda gases and breaks everything down and kills everything and is meant to kill things, like things that come in that would end up as infections. But this B coagulans is a type of probiotic, as is the Saccharomyces boulardii that makes it through that harsh environment and it survives into the colon and small intestine to where it can really build up really good bacteria. So those are the 2 things that I have for post-chemo, restoration, and the reason this is important is that your gut is the housing, it's the home of your immune system. Never knew that before, it sounds crazy, but just discovered that in the past decade that your gut and all of those microbes that aren't really you, they're foreign bodies, they're microbe, biome, is creating your immune health. It's really a huge part of your immune health, so this is really important. And then I have 3 foods at the bottom of this slide that talk about what I keep in my fridge to keep my probiotics going through food, which is the best way to do it ongoingly. I like Bubby's brand pickles. Any pickles that are on the shelf and not in the fridge are not fermented. Those are vinegar, pickled with vinegar instead of with salt. So you want something that's pickled with salt or fermented instead of pickled. And those will always be in the refrigerated section. Bubby's comes in glass instead of plastic, so I really like those. It comes in dill relish, which is so hard to find no matter what, and I just don't like sweet relish, but I love Bubby's dill relish, and I put it in my tuna fish and my, sardines and any kind of canned fish that I'm eating, which I eat a lot of. It's very anti-inflammatory. And any kind of refrigerated kraut, so not a kraut in a jar that's got, the metal lid, but something that's in the refrigerated section. These days, New Seasons and natural grocers have a lot of different brands of those. And Freddy's actually has a few too. And then organic tempeh or miso. I was actually really surprised recently. I found organic tempeh at Freddy's, even in my out here backwoods Freddy's that rarely has anything cool. Very affordable. I think it was like $3 for a big package of tempeh. And you may not like tempeh. You may have never heard of tempeh. It's just fermented soybeans. It's kind of like a cooked soybean that's fermented and it is used as a meat substitute sometimes. You never want to get soy products that aren't organic because soy is a very polluted crop. So I never ever recommend that anyone eat soy unless it's organic. And then also if it's fermented, then it's way more digestible. And I really like miso, which you could just stir into anything, any kind of soup or sauce to make it more salty. And then, of course, yogurt is the most commonly known fermented food. I always get it organic, and if it's not organic, dairy free is better. If you want, coconut yogurt, it doesn't need to be organic because coconut's not a polluted crop like milk is. Moving on. What about food addictions? I talked a little bit about this when I was talking about the diet cure. So if you find that you're using that PDF with the red light, yellow light, green light foods, and you find that you can't drop the sweet foods, that's not your fault either. It's probably because you've developed somewhat of an addiction to sugar, which is not unusual. and you probably need to work with a nutritionist. And not very many people need to work with a nutritionist, but that would be one case that I would say it would really help to have some accountability and work very, very slowly and incrementally to wean yourself off of sugar. The reason sugar is not our friend is it's highly inflammatory. It's not because it feeds cancer. It does, just like every other nutrient that we could consume, feeds every cell in our body, including cancer cells. But you'd have to starve yourself to not feed cancer cells. So that myth about sugar feeding cancer is it's really not that simple. If cancer doesn't get sugar, it's going to adapt and be able to eat things like protein and fat. So that's not the reason I say stay away from sugar. I say stay away from sugar because it's inflammatory. Humankind never had sugar in our diets, unless they stumbled upon a beehive or something like that. It wasn't a normal part of our diet until recently, and we've kind of gone crazy on it, as you know. And so we just need less of it than we are currently having available. My key is just to never buy sweets. And that way, if I go out to eat and I have dessert, then it's a special treat and it's not a normal daily thing. But it's not easy for everyone to get rid of sugar and to say no to it. So you may need a nutritionist for that. It's definitely important as a cancer survivor to stay away from sugar just because of that inflammation. And that's the end of my presentation. I wanted to keep it brief so that I could mainly focus on your questions. I'm sure that some of the things I've said have brought up questions. Um, and this is uh, just my two ways of being with you in the world, other than a one-on-one kind of session as a nutritionist with you. My membership on Substack, it's cleanupafterbreastcancer.substack.com, and I'll give you the link in a sec. It costs about as much as one session with me, so it's an incredibly economic way to stay in touch with me, get, information videos. I'm gonna do challenges on this Substack community. So we'll do, like, stay away from sugar challenge, stay away from toxin challenge, maybe we'll do an exercise challenge, stuff like that. So that'll be fun. It's a way to be involved on your phone app. Substack has a phone app that is really easy to navigate. And so I'm really excited to finally have a venue that works in terms of memberships. There's been a lot of really not so nice membership apps and platforms, and I just love Substack for that. So that's something I'm really excited about starting. And then for the last 9 months, I've been doing a podcast almost weekly. I've done seasonal, I have seasons and I take a couple months off in between, but it's called a breast cancer diary. And I don't focus so much on nutrition, but I'm very careful to have people on who value health and wellness and who agree that they make a difference, that lifestyle makes a difference. So I mostly am interviewing people that just have interesting stories to tell about their breast cancer and the way that they've been creative in coming out of some of the losses involved in breast cancer. So just get kind of deep into people's stories. And I've had a couple around exercise oncology. A recent gal that I interviewed was a leader here in Portland of the Dragon Boat, one of the Dragon Boat teams. So that's something that you might be interested in checking out too, and that's on all the podcast apps. So I'm going to stop sharing and start taking questions, but I'm also going to put all of those links in the chat that I was not able to while I was screen sharing. And I'm giving these links to Katie so that she can share them with those of you who are watching this on the recording who won't be able to see the chat. Okay, does everybody I haven't pushed send. Enter. There we go. Does everybody see those links? I'm also going to put my email address. All right. There's my email address. Kathleen Moss at protonmail.com. Um, I have a special discount for you if you want to join my membership. So I would say, cleanupafterbreastcancer.substack.com. But if you find the link, you'll get 25% off of the discount or the membership. So you might want to do that instead. And you can get that from Katie and the recording. So does anyone have questions? I've got a lot of my supplements here just in case you want to know what supplements I take. So I could talk about that too. Like I said, I didn't do chemo, but I am 2.5 years post breast cancer now, and I still use supplements. I don't obsess about supplements as some nutritionists do. I don't see anyone taking themselves off of mute to
I
ask me a question.
I have a question,
Trisha,
Kathleen.
yeah,
Yeah. Hi.
hi.
Hi, thank you. I noticed in your red light, green light graphic that you made a distinction between small fish and big fish over
Yeah.
or under 16 inches, but yet salmon, which is, I think it's probably a big fish, was in the green light section. So is that
Yeah, salmon is a borderline fish. It is right there in the middle, and because it has so much fat, it is a very healthy fish. But you wanna get it wild from Alaska. That's a really important distinction with salmon. I never ever buy Atlantic salmon or any Pacific salmon even that's not from Alaska. So,
really?
yeah, but it is not a large fish. Albacore are huge.
Yeah,
Like, there
okay.
are some really large fish, yellowfin, some of the really popular fish in the tuna or the, sushi sushi bars are very, very large fish, and those ones are accumulating mercury, and you just don't need that. I had very high mercury, and I feel like it's one of the things that made me vulnerable in the first
I
place.
see. Okay, thank you.
Yeah. Yeah, yeah. And Rachel.
Hi. Yeah, I have a couple of questions. One of them, as you know, I told you I was growing the broccoli sprouts to get the
Yeah.
sulforaphane. I just rinse them and I drain them and I just let them grow that way. It's not in soil. But I was curious, do the sulforaphane supplements work too, or are we not sure if that really,
Yes. My
oh,
favorite. This is it. This
oh,
is the one. This is the only one that I would ever say to spend any money on. And I don't make money saying that because this isn't even available through FullScript. So you have to buy it from the producer. The man who created this product, his wife had breast cancer, and that's why he created it. He did all the research. It's called Mara Labs, and Brock Elite is the name of the supplement. He did all the research to figure out how you could get the most potent, powerful, fresh sulforaphane. And this product has been third party tested to be, it blows everyone else out of the water. There is nothing like it. It is so packed full of sulforaphane that you would be probably take a whole bottle of something else in order to get as much as a couple of these guys. So it is worth its weight in gold. And I order it at least once a year. I don't take it every day. This is really I just wrote an article on sulforaphane. It's a tricky one because people think it's the DIM that you need in the broccoli, but it's actually sulforaphane that's most promising for anti-cancer properties. It's being tested. It's not proven yet, but it's showing a lot of promise for anti-cancer kinds of effects. DIM is not for everyone. DIM is mostly for premenopausal women. It also comes in broccoli, but it has a totally different mechanism. And if you want my article on that, I can send you that article. It's on the Ask Ellen blog, but I'll send it to you because it's
oh,
easier for me
thank
to.
you. Oh, that's
Yeah, so
great.
Brock Elite, and you have to order it from Mara Labs Direct. Do not buy this on Amazon because it will be stale. It won't be as good. And that's
Okay.
why they don't sell it anywhere else because they don't want someone to buy a whole case of it and sell it on Amazon a year later when it's not as potent.
So you don't think it's too much if I eat, let's say, a half of a broccoli sprouts a day and then add that too?
No,
No?
no, never. Nope.
Okay.
But this is going to be like eating 10 pounds of broccoli sprouts. This is like so far beyond what you're doing. The freshness of what you're doing has value and probably is great. I mean, we don't know how much we need. It's not been proven. But
Oh,
if you go on vacation, you can't have broccoli sprouts, take this guy with you because it's amazing. It's really, really
oh,
amazing.
great. That's good to know. That actually leads me to another question that I wasn't planning on asking. I think I read this somewhere a long time ago, but I don't know if it's true that if you eat too much cruciferous vegetables, like maybe daily, it could be bad on the thyroid. So I don't want to be hurting myself, but yet I'm eating a lot of cruciferous vegetables.
Yeah, no, I don't think that I mean, a lot. What's a lot, I guess?
I
Like,
don't know,
at
daily.
our age, we don't have a huge appetite, right? Like, we're not eating, like, pounds and pounds and pounds of broccoli. So,
Mhm.
I don't
You don't think
personally,
so?
I'm not worried about it,
Okay.
no.
I think my last
If it
question is, oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead. Go ahead.
I was gonna say if it costs you the protein, don't let it cost you protein because you need protein. We all, as
Okay.
we age, after the age of 40, we need protein to keep our muscles healthy and strong. So don't eat so many vegetables that you're not getting enough protein. That's the only
Okay.
warning I would say.
Okay. I always buy the cheapest eggs, but I notice there's so many different kinds of eggs. I think there's like organic and pasture. I don't know the differences between them. And
Yeah.
does it really matter which one you? Oh, it does.
As a breast cancer survivor, it really does. I
Uh-oh.
mean, chickens are small, so they are not as toxic as a toxic cow, which is full of really powerful hormones, way more hormones than we're meant to have in our system. So that's the good thing about chickens and eggs is that they're not going to do a lot of harm in terms of their hormones affecting your body, which we call exogenous hormones, hormones that come from outside of our bodies. But those eggs, so the most beautiful nutritious part of the egg is the yolk, and the yolk is fatty. It has amazing fats, the omega-3 fats. And a toxic bird will store its toxins in that fat. And so if you're giving up, a lot of people eat just egg whites. It's protein, but it's not great protein. And it's not very easy to digest. So really we're eating the egg for the yolk. And if you're eating dirty eggs, then you're getting it a lot more of that dirty in the yolk. So I always prioritize buying the best eggs, which is not just organic, but pasture raised. So the reason we want pasture raised is that those chickens are getting chlorophyll from grass instead of just eating grain. And for animals, grain is like you and I eating sugar all the time instead of eating our vegetables. They don't get much nutrient out of the grain. They get tons of nutrient out of the grass. It's what they're meant to eat. Nature meant for them to eat. And when my mom was little, all the eggs had grass-fed. There was no such thing as a non-grass-fed chicken. But now, because of our factory farms and the way that we've mass produce our food, almost all the chickens are eating grain instead. So even if it's organic grain, it's still not very nutritious, and you're spending all this money on
Mm,
something that's not giving you very much back.
yeah.
So I love natural grocers because their eggs are actually affordable. Their really good quality eggs are still under $5. So I just go to natural grocers and do almost all my shopping there. I'm just totally sold on them.
Okay. I'll check it out. Thank you.
Yeah, good question.
So, if you raise your own chickens, are there other things that your chickens should be getting? Because, like, we have chickens, but we don't let them out in the yard because our dogs don't necessarily think that, they should be there.
Yeah, it's
Um,
tricky.
and so we do give them a lot of other food scraps and grass clippings, in addition to the grain and the oyster shells and the corn and stuff that they get, the
Yeah.
food. So, are there other things that we could be feeding our chickens to help enhance the eggs we have?
Yeah, that's tricky. I've had chickens too. And what I learned is that it's really the breed of chicken that you want to go
Okay.
after. There are grass loving chickens and there are grain loving chickens, just because
Okay.
generation after generation of breeding has bred that taste in them. So some chickens won't even eat the most beautiful, fresh sprout out of Rachel's kitchen. Like that should be the ideal food for
Right.
them. When I had chickens, I had some that would eat the grass and some that wouldn't eat the grass. And you notice when they go out into the field, so we had pastures and they would only eat the young sprouts of grass. They're very picky.
Right.
And that tells you they want the really nutritious good stuff that's just growing, that's just starting to grow and it has all those beautiful nutrients and has all the sunlight and the chlorophyll. And so really, if you have the energy, what I started to do is I started sprouting grain. So I'd
Okay.
buy whole oats. Oats at that time were less toxic than wheat. Now their oats are sprayed with glyphosate too. But get a non-GMO oat because we do grow oats around here. We don't grow as much wheat around here. And I would get it in huge bags, from the feed store, from a farm supply place, and soak them and let
Okay.
them sprout. And you don't have to let them sprout very high. Like they don't have to have like a huge bean sprout type tail on them. Really, they just need a little green. And so they need to be turning green and have a little green sprout peeking out. And I could probably turn you on to a good YouTube video about people that do this outside. They can even do sprouting of these grains
Okay.
outside if you're careful
Mhm.
enough about rats and mice. You don't want to get rodents in there. But yeah, so you just want a little green and that makes it super nutritious. It turns it from like a candy into a vegetable for them. And
Okay.
most chickens will eat that. If it's a grain that's just barely sprouting, most of them will think it's even better than grain because they know what's good for them. But it would be good if you could get them some sort of like maybe when we had sheep, we had alfalfa. So we would feed the chickens
Okay.
alfalfa as well. And sometimes they'll eat that. And that's really good for them as long as it's not a GMO crop. So
Okay.
that's my best advice. It's really tricky because you think you're doing so well by getting organic grain. I mean, it is, it's expensive and hard to
Yeah.
find, but it's still grain. It's still not the best food for
Right.
them.
Yeah. And our chickens lately are getting like a lot of the food scraps that we have, and we have a lot of fruit trees and stuff. So during the summer when the trees we have too much that we can't eat, we've been giving like some of the apples and things like that to
Yeah.
the chickens.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, so
That's great. Love it. Yeah, Rachel.
Okay, I don't want to monopolize, but I don't see any
No.
other hands up. Thank you. I was curious, are the sugar-free carbonated flavored waters bad for us? I drink a lot of these La Croix, but I don't know. Someone once told me it's bad for your teeth, even though there's no sugar in there. So I just don't know.
Yeah, I love those too. And that flavor is my favorite. I am so addicted
Me
to that
too.
flavor. Is it limonada?
Yeah,
Limoncello?
yeah,
Oh my
limoncello.
gosh. Love it. So
It's so
I try
good.
to limit myself to a couple La Croix a week because it is the carbon dioxide, carbon something that makes the bubbles. I don't know if it's dioxide or
Carbonated
something else.
water? I don't know.
It's a carbon
Carbonation?
product. Carbonation. Yes, let's just call it carbonation. That can affect your bones. And we don't know,
Oh,
there's not a lot of studies. We know that cola products are really awful on your bones because the combination of artificial color, artificial sweetener, and carbonation is like a triple negative, like horrible, horrible effect for your bones. And there's some theories that say that carbonation in general is going to be hard on your bones. And we do not need weaker bones. We are already in trouble.
right.
Menopause and the breast cancer pills. We don't need weaker bones. So I try to get mineral water. So I love Topo Chico. That's my favorite if I ever find it on sale. But you can get
Hmm.
Pellegrino, Perrier, any kind of mineral water. And nowadays they're coming with the same flavoring that your La Croix has, the same little
Oh,
it's called limonene, which is actually a really good um studied anti-cancer agent in itself. That concentrated oils of lemons and limes are really, really good for even for topical, like for an essential oil to rub on your breast for breast health. So the fact that you're drawn to lemons is good. It's your body telling you that what you need. And so I just had a Topo Chico that had a grapefruit essence in it, and that has the limonene essential oil in it as well. And that's much better for you because you're getting mineral and you're getting natural carbonation. So it actually it tastes the same, but it's quite different and better for you.
and safe
Uh,
to drink every day?
yeah, safe to drink every day for
Cool.
sure. Yeah.
Okay, I'm changing to that. Thank you.
Yeah,
That's,
you're welcome. I hate to give that bad news 'cause I love La Croix too, but
yeah,
I don't drink it every day. Yeah.
yeah, but I needed to know. So maybe that's why my teeth have been kind of sensitive. Maybe, I mean, the teeth are bones, so I imagine
Right.
it might
It would be
be
the
bad for
same
those. Yeah.
effect. Yeah. I don't know. I don't know. If you never had it before, it seems like it would take quite a while to do much damage. So I wouldn't be too afraid.
Okay.
Yeah. Oh, Hello, Juanita. I didn't see your name until now.
So I was wondering if I could
Yeah.
ask a question about supplements and bloating. After treatment, I had a lot of bloating in my tummy. I just felt like I had this big, huge, like layer of marshmallow around my tummy. It was just so spongy. So I did a protocol of a couple of weeks of dysbiocide and then a couple of weeks of Epithidol. And now I'm just on a probiotic, but I'm not feeling like it's enough. So I still have a lot of bloat kind of come and go all along. I can't say, oh, I'm totally bloated today because blah blah blah. It seems to be with me in and out all the time. So I'm curious about the two supplements that you mentioned earlier. And yeah, I just wanted to hear any other thoughts that you have for me and what my body's doing right now.
Yeah. So I work with elders, and elders,
Mhm.
especially after COVID, can have like a lot of distress in their bellies. And one of the main things I do is I work with this issue. Just very suddenly, they can have like just awful bloating, awful
Mhm.
gas, awful loose stool. And so I've learned what works. And that probiotic that I showed you, the Saccharomyces boulardii, is my number one go-to,
Okay.
and that is likely to work. Um, if that doesn't work, I have a second product that almost always, like I've almost never had someone not respond
Mm.
to. It's more expensive. It's hard to find. I used to have a brand that I really, really liked, and it's no longer available.
Mm.
And you can only get it from practitioner. It's not sitting on the shelf because it is very time sensitive. You have to take it or else it goes bad. So um, it's called bovine derived immunoglobulin. And
Mm.
it's a highly, it's kind of like trying to think of the name of the first milk that comes out of a
Mhm.
mother's breast or a
Col-
cow's teat.
Colostrum,
It's that
colostrum.
colostrum. That's it. Yep.
Yeah,
Thank you.
yeah.
It's kind of like colostrum. Colostrum has a lot of immunoglobulin properties, but this is like a concentrated immunoglobulin. It's like a medicine. It's really is the closest thing that
Mm.
nutritionists have to medicine. And it is just amazing for the gut. It's so restorative.
Mm.
Um, the only other thing I would say that is super, super just lovely for the gut is just having bone broth, having homemade bone
Mm.
broth. I wouldn't do the store-bought kind because it's just so wimpy. It's kind of weak. But just, get a chicken or a turkey, whatever, and just put it in the crock pot or the Instapot
Mm.
and
Yeah.
Get get cook it until the bones are brittle
Mhm.
enough to just fall apart in your fingers,
Mhm.
and then put it in the fridge or the freezer and just drink a little bit. I like to drink that with fermented miso, soy product, organic miso, and because I don't love the taste of bone broth.
Mm.
So the miso kind of just a little masking of the taste of the bone broth and makes it salty so it actually tastes good. So, those would be my 3 tips.
Mm. Thank
And if you
you.
wanna just go straight for the bovine-derived immunoglobulins, that might be smart at this point because 'cause you've already tried some probiotics. But this is
Okay.
actually the Saccharomyces boulardii is very different than most probiotics. It's not anything like the kind of probiotics you get from, like, Lactobacillus or the
Okay.
typical ones that you get in the store, so it's worth a shot
And
for sure.
that one is the one that's going to be available that you're going to put on full script
I I put the
for us?
probiotic link, yeah, it's the one that says
Awesome. Thank you.
fullscript.com. Yeah, that's one of the 2 things on that list. Now the bovine-derived immunoglobulin, you'll have to work with me individually on because I'll have to look for that, see what's available right now. It's been a little while since I've prescribed that to any of my clients, but I'll find it for you. I'll find you a good one. All right, where are we with time? We still have a half hour. What else can we talk about? Oh, here it is. This is actually the immunoglobulin that I used to use. SBI Protect, just in case you wanted to know. It's by Orthomolecular. Yeah,
I kind of
Rachel,
got
go for it.
a question. When I make chicken soup from scratch, am I getting some of the components of bone broth without having to drink that yucky stuff?
Well, if you boil the bones and use that for the broth, then you are. Is that what you're doing?
Yeah, I do. I
Yeah,
just make chicken soup,
yeah.
the legs, drumsticks, and the breasts, and so I'm getting the same thing because it tastes so good. Yeah, I don't
The
have
way
to
to
cook
know,
bones for a long time where they're actually falling apart.
well, the way to know if you've got good collagen and gelatin in your broth is if you put it in the fridge and it turns solid. It's like Jello.
Oh, good.
It's
It
just
does.
basically the same as Jello.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah. So if it's gelatinous, then it's way better than the bone broth you're gonna get in the store because most of that is liquid.
Okay.
The other thing you
Okay.
can do is just take gelatin. Like when my mom was recovering from COVID and just in general, I would always, when I was over at my mom's, I would make her healthy Jello. So I brought this with me because I knew I would. Well, actually, this is not gelatin. This is collagen, but this is the brand I
Oh,
get when I
yeah.
get gelatin. Vital Proteins. It's a green canister. It looks just like this, only it's green, like apple green. And you can make that with fruit juice. So I just keep tart cherry juice and blueberry juice and some Concord grape juice, which is a little sweeter. So you can put a little Concord grape juice in to sweet the cranberry or the tart cherry juice that's healthier.
Mm.
And then you have to start cold with it really cold out of the fridge. And you add this is collagen, but you add the gelatin. Um, Stir it in while it's cold and then increase the heat. It doesn't have to boil or anything, just has to start steaming and the gelatin will break down and then you chill it in the fridge and it's a really great dessert. I've even made it with coconut cream, like a pina colada kind of, so it's a little bit more fatty. And yeah, kids like it, adults usually like it. You don't have all that artificial color, sweetener, flavor that you do in Jello brand gelatin. Super, super healthy. I made the chef at work start making it for all of my clients because they just need it so badly to repair their injuries from falls and things like that. So, but yeah, it's really gentle on the stomach. It'll really help to heal your stomach, your intestines, not just your stomach. So glad that I brought that, and I'm just remembering that I was going to show you this book by Julia Ross. Really amazing book, The Diet Cure. It's a weird name, but she talks about our addictions and food cravings, weight problems, mood swings. My daughter has mental health stuff. She went through foster care, and um, Julia Ross's books have been amazing in terms of helping with my daughter's mood needs. So we've done a lot of amino acid supplementation just to get her back into a healthy emotional space. So that's been kind of life-saving in a lot of ways. Love Julia Ross. But that's a lot of the work I do too, is just help people with food cravings and addictions. It's important work.
I've got a craving, I think. You
Yeah.
know, I used to do the Atkins diet many years ago. I know that's really outdated now. And he used to say you can eat as much meat as you want. And so I'm trying to get away from having such a large amount of meat because I think with the low carb diets, now they're saying have a small portion of meat. And because there's a guy I listen to on YouTube. I can't think of his name at the moment, but he said the things that raise your insulin, because it says it's all about insulin to lose weight, keep your insulin levels down.
Hmm.
And he says it's the carbs, the sugar, and the meat. And that's what I didn't understand. Like, how does meat increase your insulin levels?
So meat I mean, all food increases your insulin levels depending on when you eat it. So in the evening, your insulin response is going to go way up. So I always stop eating before it gets dark outside. Um, that's kind of it's a paleo mindset, like the paleo way of eating. look back at what our ancestors did. What did they do? What are we programmed to do? We're not programmed to eat after dark. So I agree with that. The insulin is an issue for weight gain and for breast cancer for that matter, because insulin growth factor is one of the main targets that scientists are trying to find a pharmaceutical to reduce. And yet, like I said, growth factors are our friends when it comes to building muscle. So we need them in some ways, and we really don't want them in others. So my strategy is to stop eating at the time of day when insulin response goes way up when you eat. I think it's really important to eat meat personally. I have the really kind of privileged place of living with a hunter. So my husband brings fresh wild meat home. It's like low in fat, it's super high in nutrients. And yeah, I don't have any problem, especially as you get older. Meat is going to be one of your main staples because our appetite goes down. And so you need the protein to stay up. And I'm not saying you need a ton of protein, but you do need it to stay stable. And so as your appetite goes down, you really just need to focus on, fruit, veggies, and meat because the things like potatoes and pasta and bread, they're just not doing you any good. They're not worth much in terms of nutritive value.
Yeah. Yeah.
But I try and I fail, but I try to get like 100 grams of protein a day. It's a lot. Um, but I do believe since I am now very physically active, I'm doing, kind of weight training or uh, impact training and or resistance, I guess, resistance training and a lot of walking. So I am using my muscles. So as long as you're using your muscles, you're not just laying around, you're not an invalid, then you should be getting plenty of meat to feed those muscles because meat is the best way to feed muscles. You can get this is a protein too, right? But this feeds every other tissue in your body. Collagen and gelatin are great for skin, hair, nails, are the epithelial cells,
Yeah.
everything, the bones, and but everything but the muscle. But if you're gonna stay muscular and strong and not become weak as you age, you do need to probably eat good quality meat.
Yeah, that makes sense. Thank you. Yeah, I'm trying to prevent the sarcopenia I've been
Yeah.
reading about too. So it makes sense. The exercise together with the protein. Yeah, thanks.
Yeah, meat's expensive, but you're worth it.
Mhm.
So because I saw you hold up the collagen, and that is a question that I just had asked my oncologist about that I'm waiting to hear back. That if you are taking, um, like the tamoxifen or AIs, is it still safe to take collagen powders and supplements to, help with other issues that you may have, like, thinning of your hair and things like
I
that?
would say I would say it's even more important for us.
Okay.
Yeah, even more important. And your oncologist has no idea the answer to that question probably. They just don't get trained in nutrition, unfortunately.
Right.
They probably don't know. But if they do, then you should listen to them and not me because I always have to let them have veto power.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah, I can't believe how little we've learned, like even in high school health, they don't tell you how important this stuff is. If you break a bone, if you break anything, if you tear your skin, like you need this to heal. This is so important. And it's important because we don't eat the whole animal anymore. We don't stew those bones the way we used to. We don't eat the ligaments. Like my mom ate the ligaments off of chicken bones. But, that grosses me out, like, I don't think any of my peers did growing up. I certainly don't like to bite into that gelatinous stuff. So, yeah, we need this. This is like medicine, kinda like magnesium. Magnesium is missing in our soils right now, and we really have to supplement with magnesium. But we kinda need to supplement this guy too,
Okay.
especially if we've had an injury of any sort. And chemo is an injury. It's a severe
Yeah.
injury to your stomach and intestinal linings.
Yeah, I figured she'll come back and tell me yes. Um, but I was like, well, I should ask before I start taking something. Because I know a lot of the other things that you can't take because they interfere with, the medicines that they put you on. So
Yeah.
I figured the collagen would be pretty safe.
Yeah, and you'll notice when you start taking it that your fingernails will become so much stronger. Like it's just remarkable. You can see yourself getting replete in
Right.
these nutrients.
Which would be really nice.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, and I am going to stop the recording.
Great.
And I know, Colleen, you have another question.
Yeah, thank you. It isn't really a question. I was just wondering,
Okay.
Kathleen, if you could indulge us with what is a typical eating style in a normal day of yours?
Yeah, that's a great question. I used to be all about the smoothie, and lately I'm realizing that I need more protein than that. Like I'm headed into menopause. I'm in the middle of the menopause transition. I probably have like 6 months left, I'm guessing. Um, and so I feel very aware that I need to actually put effort into getting more protein. So I'm moving right now from smoothies as a daily habit toward eggs and actually more yogurt because yogurt has protein, especially Greek yogurt is a lot of protein. I actually went without dairy for 20 years at least. And then I learned that as a intolerant individual, you can actually build up your lactase, the enzyme that breaks down lactose. And so I did that and it worked. And so now I can have hard cheeses and yogurt. And I'm having
Hmm.
quite a bit of yogurt actually. So breakfast, I make a frittata. You know, frittatas. We talk frittatas. Um, I make a frittata every week just for myself, not for my whole family, just for me in a big casserole dish. And I can send you my recipe. And I fill it with veggies and usually some meat. We make our own sausage out of like venison, elk, and so it's pretty healthy frittata. And I take a big square of that every morning, especially if I'm running out the door. And then, maybe on the odd day when I have time, I'll have like a yogurt parfait with just a little bit of Simply Elizabeth. I think is the brand of granola that's organic and low sugar. Little sprinkle of that. A lot of coconut flakes because I love dried coconut lately. I'm always craving it. And break up some pecans because that's my favorite nut. And I do like just as many nuts as I do granola just to make it like a little bit more of a paleo granola feel. And then berries. I've been buying lots of berries lately because I just crave berries and sometimes a greenish banana, not a fully green banana, but like one that's still got some green on. And I keep the bananas in the fridge so that they don't ripen too fast. So those are my two breakfast go-tos other than smoothies, which I'll once in a while I'll go back to the smoothie. Smoothies are really important if you're taking any kind of powdered supplement like this guy. So this is a good way to get your the smoothie is a good way to get that in. Um, if I can grab this. I have this over on my desk. It's empty, but this is citrus pectin. It's also a really good, it's a binder. It's really good for after you've had an MRI or a surgery to get all those icky things out of your system. So whenever I need to take this, if I've had an MRI or a surgery, it's called Pectisol C, and it's just a really good binder. Then this is a powdered form. It comes in capsules, but they're more expensive. So I have powder downstairs, but I put that in my smoothie too. So if I need a medical supplement that's powdered, then I always try to take at least a few smoothies a week. But usually these days it's a frittata or a yogurt parfait. And then lunch, a lot of times I'll skip lunch these days just because I am in the menopause transition. I'm not super hungry. And dinner, I always have meat. And lately I'm having a lot of squash. I love butternut squash, but then find these Japanese sweet potatoes, the purple sweet potatoes a lot these days. So I've been having those lately with my dinner. And then any kind of greens, broccoli. I have a frozen mix that I like from Costco, and I do sauerkraut as a backup plan if I'm out of fresh vegetables. Um, I always have sauerkraut, at least a couple containers of it in the fridge because I just love it. What was I gonna say? Oh, and coleslaw. If I do have lunch, it's usually a homemade coleslaw with tahini instead of mayo and canned fish. I really like canned fish for lunch. So I do sardines, mackerel, smoked trout. I get the Trader Joe's canned fish. Amazing. It's super flavorful and they have some smoked varieties and they're always skinless. Well, they're not always skinless and boneless. You have to make sure, but most of them are skinless and boneless. I really like sardines as a tuna substitute. You can do skipjack tuna. That's a smaller size tuna. It's a darker tuna. It's not albacore. It's not like white tuna like albacore. So it's a little bit more flavorful. But I actually like sardines now. I've grown accustomed to them and they're super affordable. Costco always has like really good quality sardines. So I eat a lot of that. That's what I call my medical meal. I'll mix up sardines, a Bubby's relish, and avocado as like a dip. And then I'll like put it onto homemade coleslaw or I'll use some kind of like a almond cracker to dip into it. So that would be my lunch. These days I don't always have lunch. Kind of strange. Getting old. And then
You're
chocolate
not
for
that
dessert.
old.
I always have a little bit of chocolate. Dark chocolate is known to be um kind of it's a danger zone because the heavy metals with dark chocolate. So I always try to get a single variety dark chocolate that comes from Africa and not South America because like cadmium and lead, I think, have been found quite often in South American dark chocolate. And I love dark chocolate. So it's like my one indulgence. Yeah. And I really crave it. I think just that magnesium. I think if I supplemented 3 times as much with magnesium instead, I probably wouldn't crave dark chocolate like I do. But sometimes I'll melt dark chocolate on the stove with a big dollop of almond butter or peanut butter. And you still get the chocolatiness, but it's not sweet like sweet chocolate is. Because I just don't even like milk chocolate or sweet chocolate anymore. But with the nut butter, it's actually really pretty yummy. And I'll dip an apple in that or just eat it with a spoon sometimes. Those are my go-to meals.
Nice. Oh, thank you, Kathleen. And I am going to stop the recording. I wanted to get Pauline's question in there first.
Oh, thanks.
Yeah.